everybody, I'm Dr. Poppy Moon, and today what I want to do is talk to you about data-informed school counseling. As school counselors, we use data to drive student success, and we also use that to create something called a Closing the Gap action plan. So let's take a look at what a data-informed school counselor does. First of all, we look at data to identify student needs. We also say, okay, here are the needs. How am I going to use those to kind of set goals for my program as a guidance counselor? We also use those at the end after we've kind of done all of the little things that we wanted to do. We look at that and we say, oh, was this effective? Were the things that I implemented effective? And we also use data to advocate for equity and systemic change. So when we see specific problems, we can use that to advocate for those students that are falling behind. So there are different types of data that we look at as school counselors. The first of those is student achievement data. So we're looking at test scores, grades, graduation rates, and we're just kind of getting an overall view of how are our students doing academically at our school. The next one that we look at is behavioral data, discipline referrals, suspension and expulsion rates. We are looking for trends, behavioral trends that we're seeing in schools. Are we seeing less referrals? Great. Are we seeing more? There's a problem and we need to focus on that. We're also looking at student engagement data. So these are how many kids are participating in extracurricular activities. We could do some school surveys so we can kind of look at the social and emotional climate that we have at the school. And we want to see how is the school connecting with students' lives. And then the next one and last one that we look at is opportunity and equity data. And this highlights who's accessing programs like AP classes or extracurriculars. And we want to see, are there some disparities based on demographics? So looking at all of this data gives us a full picture of the student experience. So this is beyond grades and beyond test scores and into who they are as a student and how they're doing in our school. So data matters. Data reveals hidden gaps and disparities. So those disparities could be academic performance, that could be behavioral challenges, or participation in advanced programs. So by looking at it, it helps us to prioritize our interventions. And we use those interventions to make sure we are meeting the needs of all of our students, not just a group, not just this. We want to make sure everybody's doing well at our school. So by looking at the data, we can measure the impact of our efforts. And we can say, okay, so this worked, this is great, we'll keep it up. Or what we tried to implement didn't work so well. So let's adjust that this year and see if we can make those things better. But data also supports advocacy. So sometimes we say, oh, look at this. We have a tiny subset of students that are really struggling, and we can see that in the data. So we can use that to advocate for resources or policy changes in the school. So data also aligns with our ASCA standards. So the ASCA mindsets and behaviors, they guide our focus on students' academic success, their career, and their social emotional growth. So by having data, we ensure that we're targeting all these areas effectively. So the ASCA National Model outlines the importance of using data across 4 different elements. First one is define. Data helps us define what student needs. The second one is manage. So data ensures that programs are organized and that they are goal-oriented. Also, we deliver. We are using data to plan meaningful interventions. And we also use it to assess. So continuous data collection, it helps us to assess and refine our program. So using data ensures that our counseling programs are aligned with best practices and that we are also being accountable. So here's some examples of data-informed practices, and this is one that we're going to look at today. Closing the gap. So we're using achievement data to design interventions for students who are underperforming in certain groups. We also are going to look at behavioral trends. So sometimes if we have things like small group sessions, we work with a specific group, we can bring down higher discipline referrals if we have that. And then also maybe we are having some attendance problems. We look at the data and we're saying, oh, this particular group of students, we're not seeing them in school. I wonder why that is. How can we develop a program just for them that's going to help them with their chronic absenteeism? Okay, so here is an exciting yet boring form. And if you go into the ASCA National Model book, this is the red one, A Framework for School Counseling Programs. On page 33, it talks to you about a school data summary. A school data summary is really good because when you're sitting down with your admin and your teachers at the end of the year, you are going to want to have a data summary. And the data summary allows you to work with all of these different people to look at all of the data that's out there for different things and to make sure, am I, as a school counselor, helping meet needs with the school? So the school has their own kind of goals and visions, their improvement plan, and that's for them. But as a school counselor, you want to work with them and make sure that your goals are also helping meet the school goals. So let me show you a little example of one. Here's just a simple data summary that we looked at. The first part of it is, let's understand your school story. So here it first asks, who are the people that you're going to work with? Who are the people that have the data for you? So in this example that we're using, we've got Miss Johnson. She's an instructional coach, and she's our data expert for the school. She knows where to get it. We have Mr. Riviere. He's the school counselor. We have Dr. Taylor, the assistant principal, and Miss Lee, who's the social worker. So these are the people who are working together on the school data summary. So the second part of it is to look at the school improvement plan and see what the school's goals are. And then we want to take those goals and say, how can the school counselor help with those? So right now, just the main school is looking at increasing attendance rate because they have some bad absenteeism here. We also want the school's looking to work on some math achievement with 8th grade students. And then we've got some problems with some behavioral referrals, and they want to be able to work on that. So how are these relevant to the school counseling program? This is great. As school counselors, we work on 3 things. We work on attendance, we work on achievement, and we work in discipline and behavior. So by looking at these things on the school improvement plan, I can say, okay, as a school counselor, how am I going to focus on those? How am I going to work with them? And I'm going to start by looking at data trends. So we are going to use that school data summary and the data that the data expert got together for us. We're going to look at that data together with the rest of the people on the team. We're going to see what is the problem. Where are they actually happening? So let's take a look at it right here. So here's an example of some achievement data. Okay, so we've got reading proficiency, we've got math proficiency, and then we have an achievement gap. So we have students who are economically disadvantaged, and we are looking at them in conjunction with their peers. All right. So here we have in the achievement data, what does it mean? What do the percentages mean? Because you look at this and you're like, oh, okay, that's great. I see some percentages, but I don't really understand how that relates to me as a school counselor. So if the data says something like 68% of the students passed the reading test right there, this is what it really means. So let's say that we have 100 students who took the reading test. So if 68% of them passed, that means that 68 students out of 100 students got high enough to pass the test. But, oh no, the remaining 32 students didn't pass, because if we take 100 minus 68, that is 32. Okay, so that's a lot of students, actually. Okay, so what if the math data said that 55% passed? Okay, there it is again. That means that 55 out of 100 students passed. But it also means that 48 or 45 students out of the 100 didn't pass. That's a lot of kids that aren't passing on there. So what is this over here? We have an achievement gap. All right, so the data says that there's a 15% gap in achievement between students who are economically disadvantaged and their peers in math. So that means that students who are coming to your school from low-income backgrounds are 15% less likely to pass than the other students. And that's a problem. That's something that you as a counselor will be like, this is something I need to think about and I need to focus on. So why do these percentages matter? If enough students are not passing the test, that means that we as a school need to work on that. So does that mean that we're going to provide tutoring? Are we going to do extra support? Are we going to come out with some type of program that we can use to help them to meet these needs? So if there's a gap, that means that we need to focus on that gap. Okay, so the summary here for this, we've got 68% passing in reading. So 68 out of 100 students passed. We've got 55% passing in math. So 55 out of 100 students are passing. And the 15% gap means that our economic kids are behind the regular kids. Okay. Again, what does this mean if we're talking about this in our group with our people? Reading performance is holding steady. So we're okay on reading, but there's always room for improvement. Math scores, they're going down. So we know that math needs extra attention. And we can also say the achievement gap is getting bigger, which means that we need to do some targeted support for those kids that are not doing well. So now let's go to our next one, which is attendance data. And we're looking at 3-year trends again over that. Okay, So once again, we've got our 2021 to 2022, 22 to 23, and 23 to 24 data that we're looking at. Okay, so the data says something like 18% of students are chronically absent. And this percentage tells us how many students have missed 10% of school days or more. Okay, so if there are 100 students in the school, this means if 18% miss their school, that means 18 students out of 100 are missing at least 18 days, okay? So we've got a lot of students who are missing a lot of days at school. So what we want to do is reduce the number of chronic absenteeism. All right. So I told you, I kind of went over this on the other one, but I'll just say, the more days that students are missing school, the more these kids are falling behind. And we also have to worry, does that mean that they're going to have trouble once they get to graduation? So we need to track those things and see what's going on. All right, so I told you that right there. Sometimes I make too many slides and I get ahead of myself. Okay, there. Okay, I will point this out. So as we know, chronic absenteeism is a problem. It's gonna affect their academic success. So we want to find out, why are these students having problems? Why are they missing school? Are we having trouble with transportation? Are there family challenges that we need to know about, why they can't get them there? Is there a problem with school engagement? Are kids coming to school and they're just like, this is not really meeting my needs. I'm just not enjoying being at school, so I'm not going to come. Okay, so that's another issue that we look at. So are we going to do some cool things? Are we going to do an attendance campaign? Are we going to do some family outreach programs? That's something that you will work with your school team to figure out how you're going to meet those. All right, so let's look at behavior. I feel like behavior is most important for school counselors because that's something that we can work on with like social emotional work, okay? Like the attendance, we can do that. With the achievement stuff, we can kind of work on that with them. But I feel like behavioral referrals are definitely something the counselor can work on. So behavioral referrals, they happen when a student is getting in trouble in school. And you have a teacher or a staff member who is reporting this formally to the office. So they're doing a write-up. So this can come to the principal and they will probably let you see the discipline referral so you'll know what's going on. Once again, I will point out that school counselors, we don't deal with actual discipline. We can deal with the referrals and reasons that this is happening, but we never discipline kids. So if someone ever asks you to do that, just make a note. Dr. Moon says school counselors never deal with discipline. But there are different reasons why they're sending kids to the office. Usually it's stuff like disrupting class, they are not following the rules, or they are doing things like fighting while they're in class. So here, let's look at some behavior trends that our data lady has brought for us. If we look at 2021, we've got 75 referrals for 7th grade students. 2022, that's going up. Now we have 80 students who are getting referrals. And then in 23-24, look, it's gone up again. It's gone up to 86%. So, this is a problem because I'm seeing that 7th grade students, their referrals are going up. And I have to think, why are they going up? What's happening over this period of time? Why is this growing? And what kind of extra support do they need in behavioral type programs? Okay, so in 2021 and 2024, the most common issue that we're seeing are classroom disruptions. Okay, so they're making noise, they're interrupting lessons, they're getting up and walking around, they're generally making it difficult for the teacher to be able to teach. So if we look over here in 2023, the most common issue was noncompliance. So that means that students are not following the rules, or they are ignoring the teachers. Now we come to what the counselor can actually do. We have something that's called a Closing the Gap Action Plan. And you can look in here in your ASCA National Model Framework for School Counseling Programs, and it goes through what the Closing the Gap Action Plan is. But you were lucky because today I'm going to share that information with you. So a Closing the Gap Action Plan helps you identify and address equity gaps in student outcomes. So these could be done for achievement and attendance, of course, but I like to do them for behavior because I think that's where we can be most successful. So we want to ensure that all students have access to the resources and the programs that they need to succeed. So if we take and implement data-driven interventions to improve outcomes for specific student subgroups, then we can monitor that, we can adjust interventions, and we can achieve meaningful results. So when do we use something like this Closing the Gap Action Plan? If the data shows that certain student groups, like economically disadvantaged students or English language learners, are falling behind, we know that if we're seeing a behavioral pattern, such as frequent discipline referrals, it's affecting a particular grade level or it's affecting a particular group of students disproportionately. If we're seeing some achievement gaps, like we looked earlier, we saw that those were students from a lower SES or disadvantaged groups, then we know we should do a closing the gap action plan to kind of focus on them. If you go to page 54 in the ASCA National Model Framework, you will find the Closing the Gap action plan that you will be able to use. You can also go online to the school counseling, to the ASCA site, and they have a place where you can download templates on there. So they have all of these where you can pull them onto your computer and you can work through them directly from there. Okay, so we are going to do a Closing the Gap action plan. We were looking at those 7th grade students, and we were seeing that over a period of time, those 7th grade students are starting to have a big gap. They're starting to have more and more problems with the referrals. We're seeing that. In the Closing the Gap action plan, we are going to use a SMART goal. And a SMART goal is where it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. Those are important things when you're doing a goal. So maybe we say something like, we're going to reduce 7th grade behavior referrals by 13% by the end of the school year. Okay, so that would be our SMART goal. And then we're going to do some action steps. What are the strategies that we're going to use to kind of help those behavior problems decrease? Are we going to do small groups? Are we going to do some teacher behavior management support? Could be lots of things. So we'll think about it. Then we'll also think about what kind of resources are we going to need? Staff time. Am I going to need to buy like a behavioral program that I'm going to use with that particular group? Am I going to get parents involved, and how am I going to do that? I also am going to set a timeline. What's my deadline? How am I going to go through each step? What are my deadlines for each step? How am I going to track when these interventions are taking place? And then I need, at the very end, after I've done all of these things that I've come up with, I need to track the results to see, has the gap been reduced, and do I need to adjust some different things? All right, so in this, we have identified 7th graders as our key subgroup. And this is a school-wide issue, the class disruption, they need support. So in equity and opportunity, I am realizing some students are not getting the support that they need to behave successfully in class. So this is starting to make a gap, and this gap is getting bigger, and it is a problem. And I, as the school counselor, along with all of my friends that are working with me, I need to figure out, how am I going to help? What am I going to do? So I said that you, as I say, I always make too many slides for myself. SMART goals. As I said, we're going to come up with a SMART goal template that is going to, that's going to be the baseline for what we're going to do. Whenever I look at this, and like the first time I looked at it, it says, like by this date, this targeted group will increase or decrease something, and then it goes into percentages, and then it goes into baseline data, and it goes into target data. And I'm not a huge fan of doing percentages. So when I look at a SMART goal, I'm like, wow, how did they calculate that? And how does that work? So for you, I have come up with this to explain how it works, so you'll understand how the SMART goals and the percentages are created. So step 1, we look at the baseline data. So from our little behavior table that we have here, in 2021-22, we had 75 referrals. There we go, 75 referrals for our 7th grade kids. Then the next year, it's gone up to 80. We got 80 referrals. And then the next year, it's gone up to 86. So over the 3 years, we are having 11 more referrals a year. And that's 75 to 86 referrals. Step 2, we will calculate the average annual increase. So from 2022, we went from 75 to 80, 5 more referrals. 2023, we show we're going from 80 to 86. So that's 6 more referrals. So the average annual increase, 5 plus 6 divided by 2. So overall, we are seeing 5.5 more referrals per year. Step 3, okay? We are going to set a realistic reduction goal. So we're going to reverse the trend. How are we going to reverse the trend? We want to reduce the number of referrals at least below the 86% that we have right there. What's a reasonable target that we can do? I think a reasonable target would be to reduce referrals like back to 75% or back to 75 or fewer. Okay, we want to take it back to whatever was happening in 2021-22 when things were kind of going okay. All right, step 4, we are going to calculate the percentage decrease goal. So we have current referrals, 86, target referrals, 75. So the reduction that we need is 86 minus 75. So we need 11 fewer referrals a year for things to be great, okay? Or for at least us to be happy in whatever kind of closing the gap plan that we're going to put together. So here's how you get the percentage of the decrease. It is 11 divided by 86 times 100. And that comes out to be 12.8%. Yay, we've got the percentage. Now we can go and plug it into the SMART goal format. And also in our exciting book, ASCA National Model, the red one, it has a example in there, a blank one for you to be able to write a SMART goal. So this is where I'm getting it from. So I'm writing this up. This is what my SMART goal is going to look like. By the end of the 2024-25 year, my 7th grade students, that's my targeted group, they are going to decrease the number of behavioral referrals by 13%. That means I'm going to go from 86 referrals to 75 referrals. Yay, let's hope this works out, okay? And the data source, where did I get my data? It came from the lady that we were talking about when we were looking at kind of the overall picture, our data expert. And she's giving us behavioral referral records, and that was the referral that we were using to kind of do our baseline data. Okay, action steps. Here we go. What am I going to do? What are some things that I'm going to do to be able to bring down the number of referrals? I'm thinking about it, and one thing I know that I could do is maybe do some small group counseling for self-regulation and social skills. So my objective is going to be teaching techniques to the students, the 7th grade students, for emotional control. We're going to talk about managing frustrations, and we're going to talk about appropriate social behavior. So I think I can do this every week with these kids, maybe 35 minutes, 45-minute sessions over 8 to 10 weeks. What kind of activities might I have in my small group? We could do some role playing, maybe handling peer conflict. We could do some mindfulness exercising, like when you get stressed out, let's do some breathing techniques, or we could just do some general discussions on managing emotions in class. Next thing, what else could I do? Collaborate with teachers. As we talk about, and I've talked to you guys about this over and over and over as we look at the ASCA National Model, one thing that school counselors do is we collaborate. We want to work with other people in the school to make sure that we're all looking at the same goal. So maybe I will collaborate with teachers on classroom management and behavior strategies, okay? So I'm going to make sure that they are aligned with me. And that could be, maybe I meet with some teachers and talk about what are some positive behavior supports that we might could do. Can we do some type of reward system? Whatever they think might work. We could talk about providing de-escalation techniques. So I could teach the teachers how to use these techniques. So if a kid's starting to cause conflict in the class, the teacher could use these skills. Now, teachers get a lot of information, right? They're always being asked to do extra stuff. And I know that that's very, very stressful for them. So I say, if you can, for 5 minutes during a faculty meeting, teach one of these de-escalation skills. And only 5 minutes. Don't go over 5 minutes. Don't be that person that's just like, okay, I know that I've talked for 5 minutes, and just give me another minute to bring up another example. No, get up there, 5 minutes, teach them a skill, go sit back down. They will love you because you are not being chatty and taking up their after school time. Another thing that you could do is use some check-in, check-out routines. So if you have students who are frequent disruptions, you can use that check-in, check-out to see how their daily behavior is going. So maybe you see a kid in the hall, you check in with them. How are things going today? Are you having an okay time being in control in class? Check in, check out. At the end of the day, how did it go? I saw you in class. It looked like things were going good. What do you think about it? Check in, check out. Okay. What else can I do? Let's engage our families. Okay. Again, we're collaborating. We want to work with everybody, the community and people in our schools. So let's try to foster some family involvement to reinforce positive behavior strategies when they're outside of school. Okay. So we could have parent-teacher counselor meetings. They'll come in and we will review behavior goals. We'll talk about progress with them. We can provide some home behavior charts that parents and the kids can complete together. I think a lot of times parents these days don't know how to be parents. And again, who's going to teach them how to be parents if we as the school counselors don't step in? That's our job, is that we're working with them just as well. And I promise you, a lot of times when you are helping parents with stuff like this, they become more supportive of the school. They become less afraid of if the principal calls or if the teacher calls, they're not like, oh, they're calling to yell at me about how bad my kid is. They can feel like they're part of the team and they're working together with that. You could also have weekly progress reports sent home to parents so that they can see if the student's behavior is improving. And that's always nice when parents get to hear, your kid's doing great. I'm so proud of them. Then I'm going to continue to track and monitor with progress data. So I'm going to keep looking at the data that we have, and I'm going to measure my progress, and I'm going to adjust my interventions. So if I see that after a little bit of time, like I'll track referrals weekly and I'll look at patterns. When is the behavior happening? What time of day? What class period is it happening? Just kind of get me some things to go. So if I'm looking at that and I'm seeing, oh, they're going up in this one teacher's class, maybe that makes me think this teacher might need a little bit more help with classroom management skills, different things like that. I can also use pre and post counseling assessments to evaluate student improvement. So I could maybe give a behavior checklist to the teacher, or I could give a behavior checklist to the parent to see how things are changing. And then I can get together monthly with school administrators and teachers and try to refine my strategies. So this is all a really holistic thing that I'm trying to involve everybody with. Now, the Closing the Gap Action Plan report. This is what the plan looks like that I'm going to fill out. I will keep this plan with all of my school data. So that way I can show that I am following the ASCA national model with my school counseling program. Sometimes my students will say to me, Dr. Moon, my school counselor or my site supervisor says they don't use any of this stuff in their school counseling program. And this is true. Lots of school counseling programs don't follow that ASCA national model. And that's okay. That's the decision of the school. But I want you to be prepared to go into a school right off the bat and say, let's look at the data and let me be effective because I know where the problems are and I know how to help them. I know how to help them be solved. Okay. So this is what the plan looks like. I'm just going to show you so you are aware. This is also something that you can pull off the ASCA website as a template so you can use it like on Word and you can type all your stuff. So here we have my student outcome goal that I came up with, that the student behavior was going to reduce for 7th grade students. We're going to take it down to 86, back to 75 referrals for the year, which is a 13% reduction. Okay. And I'm going to use some small group strategies, some self-regulation, different things to meet that. ASCA will ask, what are the student standards that you're going to be focusing on? So I've selected 2. I believe that students can demonstrate discipline and self-control, and I think they can do this if they have the skills. And I also think that students can have effective coping skills when they're faced with a problem. The kid can do it. They could do it. They just need some help with that. So I'm also going to look at some mindsets and behaviors as pre-post assessment statements. Okay, so let's say that I'm starting off with my small group that I'm working on these kids. I'll say, okay, guys, how many of you on your hand, how many of you guys feel like you're able to control your emotions and avoid disruptions? Okay, how many of you feel like you can do that? Maybe some of them raise their hand. You count those kids. Maybe they don't. That's okay. You're just starting out. Next thing you could say, okay, do you know positive ways to handle conflicts with your peers? Do they know that? Do they feel supported by their teacher and by their counselor in working on their behavior? And the last one that I selected was, do I understand the impact of my behavior on others? Because they might not. They might not understand that the way that they're acting is keeping other students that really want to learn from being able to learn. It's taking time away from their classmates' education. Now, we provide different types of services. Counselors provide direct services, which means I'm working directly with the student. And we also have indirect student services, which is working with people other than the students. So for my direct services that I've selected, I'm going to do small group counseling, as I talked about before, and I'm going to do that behavior check-in and check-out program. I'm going to check in with kids. The indirect things that I'm going to do is teacher collaboration meetings. So I'm going to get together with the teachers and we're going to talk about progress, positive behavior things that are going on, and anything that we need to adjust or work on. My other indirect thing is I'm going to work with parents. I'm going to conduct meetings with the parents. I'm going to help them align behavior goals at home, and I'm going to ask them to provide me weekly progress updates. The next part is a systemic focus. It wants you to identify school or system policies, procedures, or practices that create or maintain inequities relative to the goal. The things that I think go along with this are a lack of consistent behavior reinforcement strategies across classrooms. I think it is important for a school to have a behavior plan that all teachers use together. Some schools, teachers have their own things in different classrooms. That's okay, but it's easier for me to look at data if everybody is doing the same thing. And it's also great because if kids are moving around due to, different classes, go to someone for English or for math or different things like that, knowing that it's always the same is very helpful for me. And it's also helpful for the principal and other people that are on your advisory team. I also feel like there may be some inconsistent communication between the teachers and the families about student behaviors. And that's something that is a policy that might be an inequity, and that's something that I want to look at. So I also want to have 1 or 2 strategies that can influence this systemic change related to this goal. Okay. And my strategies are, I want to implement a school-wide positive behavioral reward system. Okay. That's a big thing. Implementing something like that is huge. And you've got to get everybody to buy in on it. You got to get teachers, administrations, parents. That's huge. Might that happen in a year? Of course not. Might that happen over a period of several years as me being a school counselor there? Definitely. So don't get discouraged if some of your small things aren't happening right off. You got to look at the big picture. Next thing that I will do is provide professional development for teachers on de-escalation strategies and consistent behavioral management techniques. I can do that. I can go in and do my 5 minutes at the faculty meeting. I can get out. I can also provide them other things throughout the year to assist them with that. Now, again, we're going to keep looking at the data because that's what we're always doing, is looking at the data. So I have a baseline data participation data plan. So I am anticipating that 25 7th grade students that have at least 3 or more referrals are going to engage with me in some small group counseling. That's who I'm going to focus on. My mindsets and behaviors, I kind of talked to them about that a little bit before. Pre-assessment, can you control your behavior in class? Do you feel that way? Do you feel like you know how to handle conflicts? Do you feel supported by your teacher and counselor? And do you understand the impact of your behavior? So that's what I'm going to ask them at the beginning. Now, after we do all of this, I'm going to have my results. And I won't get this until after I've done my program during the year. But when I'm doing the post-assessment, I'm going to ask them these questions again. I'm going to say, do you feel this way? Do you feel like you've learned these things? And if they say yes, then yay, things are going well. I'm doing exactly what I hoped that I would do. If not, then I'm going to have to go back and think about this. So my baseline data here for the outcome data plan is 86 behavioral referrals for 7th grade students. Okay. And then I hope that when I look at it at the end of the year, my goal is that we have gone down to 75 behavioral referrals. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. That's okay. But at least it gives me a place to keep working from. Then there's a little reflection that comes at the end of this, and it asks you, how did the interventions facilitate the attainment of the school standards? Okay. Small group counseling, did that help with emotional regulation? Did the teacher collaboration work out the way that I hoped to? How do I think that I can improve these interventions as I continue to move on? So I'll say, maybe I could make those small groups start earlier in the year. Or maybe I could do more check-in, check-out with kids during the day. Those kids I know are at risk, maybe I could start doing that earlier. Or maybe at the very beginning of the year, I could try really hard to improve family engagement by offering more flexible times for them. Maybe they work a lot, they can't come to the school for like a parent lunch or something like that. So if they can't do that, when could I do a meeting when be discussed with them? Or maybe I could do something virtually. Maybe we could have, parent meetings throughout the year and they can come in and I could do it virtually and we could meet that way. So again, all of this is a lot to think about, okay? Becoming a really good counselor, becoming a counselor that uses data to drive his or her program, this is a lot of work on your part. But I promise you, if you are dedicated to this process, then you will see over the course of your career that you have helped so many students. You have helped them change their behavior. You have encouraged them to do well in achievement. You have worked on attendance problems, and you can do all of these, attendance and achievement. Of course, you can use those as things to focus on as well. It's what's most important to you. I say good luck to you, and I support you in this. If you ever have any questions, you can always email me. My email is moon@ulm.edu. I'm happy to talk to you about strategies or ways that you can put this together. But I think that that by working with your team and working with yourself, getting some support from your colleagues, I think that this is absolutely doable. And I think it's something that you can be proud of.